Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, fellow South Africans, Bagaetso, Dumelang. Honorable members, today we face a choice. The choice that we face is a world upon which drafted by the ANC or the other one that has been placed before us by the DA. I affirm that in fact the question for South Africans is which world would they prefer to live in, because each of those worlds will lead us to a distinct, different tomorrow. As The Economist once is quoted as saying, is that in the ANC's world, it lives in a pre-1990 universe. For them, the Berlin Wall is still up. In their world, the state is everything and must do everything. In their world, SOEs, no matter how badly run they are the answer. In their world, citizens cannot be trusted to control their own destiny, let alone own their own land. The state ultimately knows what is best for the people. I urge, honorable members, in our world, the world is different. And there are many all over the world that are sharing this view. It is a view that says people ultimately have power over their own lives. In our world, citizens have agency. They can own their land, they can run their businesses, they can build their wealth. In our world, more often than not, it is a capable state that must get out of the way and allow enterprise and progress. In our world, it is building an inclusive South Africa where we can build one South Africa for all. This is the world that we want to build. And this is the choice we face, honorable members, as we contemplate the reality of this deep crisis that South Africa faces itself on. I'm not going to spend too much time telling you about the extent of our economic crisis. I think we all know it. It's the fact that less than 10 million South Africans, just under 10 million South Africans, cannot find work. It's the fact that per capita income has been dropping for the last number of years. It's that our debt is now all over 3 trillion rand. And ultimately, we now face the threat of a sovereign rating downgrade. Anyone who denies the fact that South Africa is in crisis should actually not have the right to come and stand here and debate this issue. Because ultimately, Parliament must ask itself this one question: how did we end up here and what should we do to fix it? One analyst this week described the situation as death by 1,000 cuts, referring to the many factors that together have come to paralyze our growth and bleed our fiscus dry. And this is largely true. And honorable members, perhaps many of us would know that yes, corruption has cost us as much as 100 billion rands. Many of us would know that there's a crisis at SARS that has led to huge undercollection of around 50 billion rands. Many of us know that we depend on serious bailouts to state-owned enterprises that continue to divert billions and billions of rands away from this crucial budget. Many of us know that, yes, we have an ever-expanding public sector wage bill, and a massive cabinet brought to us proudly by the ANC. And many of us know that, in fact, it's populist policies like expropriation without compensation, the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, and the proposed NHI, which has been a recipe for disaster. But I think the one thing we should never shy away from, which I find that too many analysts have stopped speaking about, is what is the real problem? What is the core of our problems with our recession, and who should take responsibility for it? Honorable member, this crisis has been brought on to South Africa squarely and fairly by the African National Congress. It's this party that should take responsibility. And in fact, 7 months into this new administration, they're already stumbling in the dark, looking for an excuse. They don't know who to blame, and they're blaming everybody. What is true is that there is no plan and there is no direction. You can come here today and be critical of the DA all you like. The fact of the matter is that we have a plan, and that's what we are here to table to tell the people of South Africa about their tomorrow. And it's that plan that is in fact working. If you look at the coalition government that's in Joburg, already under Herman Mashaba, 6 billion rands of investment has been added since taking over in 2016. If you go to the great city of Tshwane, Mayor Msimanga has already in fact tripled investment in the last 3 years, in the last 2 years. In fact, 75% of the jobs that have been created in DA-led governments, which tells you, honorable members, that where the DA is, jobs are created, the economy is stimulated, and where the ANC is, they have led us squarely and firmly into a recession. So, honorable members, I want to urge you that in fact, while the rest of the world is embracing inclusive growth economies, the ANC has decided that it will increase the budget, it will blow out our debt, and ultimately take us backwards. It's so obsessed with state control that it's forgot that it's suffocating enterprise and small businesses. Here are 2 pieces of advice. Stop blaming global financial crisis. That's from 10 years ago. And the second advice I'd like to give you is stop blaming Jacob Zuma. It would seem you are the only ones who are missing him. Instead, you want to blame everything on him. I want to propose, honorable members, if we're going to get through this recession, we need to swap the outdated policies of the ANC and take on 21st century future-focused ideas that will be brought forward by the DA. We're part of the global economy. And I want to say this to you. Just this morning, I visited an enterprise in Delft. I was so proud of the work of innovation about the future of South Africa. This is where we've got to go. And if we need ideas about how to pick up the rand, I've got a few to share with you. And I'd like you, Minister Patel and Minister of Finance, to take some notes. Number 1, I believe we must cut loose SOEs that are dragging us down. Yes, we must privatize or part privatize SAA if we're going to stop paying bailouts. We must split Eskom into 2 separate businesses, one for power production and the other for distribution. Number 2, we must put an end to the stifling Eskom monopoly by allowing cities to directly purchase power from independent power producers. Number 3, we must curb spending and stabilize our national debt at about 50% of GDP by introducing a fiscal austerity package. All revenue shortfalls must be covered by cutting waste and not increasing taxes, honorable members. Number 4, and I want to urge you, this might affect some of you whose jobs are dependent on it. We must, as a matter of urgency, cut this cabinet in half. We must get rid of deputy ministers, because many of them are appointed for the purposes of patronage, not for the service of the people in our country. Number 5, Minister Zulu, we must ensure ultimately that we exempt small businesses from complying with unworkable labor legislation. Those employing less than 250 people must be given all and possible options for success. Labor laws that restrict them should be scrapped, and we must adhere to the basic conditions of employment. Number 6, we must immediately settle all budgeted for invoices that are owed for small businesses by national and provincial governments. This alone will add 28 billion rands to boost the SMME sector. And number 7, ladies and honorable members, we need to scrap reckless populist policies that are destroying investor confidence in our country. You know, since the announcement of President Ramaphosa, our rand has already depreciated by 15%. If we keep going with populism, we'll end up like countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe and end up leading our people to become even more poor. Fellow South Africans, I want to urge you, let us abandon irresponsible and a reckless plunge towards expropriation without compensation. Let us reform land, but let's do it so within our constitution. It doesn't mean that land reform and restitution must be delayed. Actually, on the contrary, I want it to be accelerated, I want it to be sped up, but it must involve full title to the people, not to the state. Because this If this is done properly, it will ensure private property rights and ultimately the rule of law, not the populism you're adopting. We must, honorable members, stand up for the independence of the Reserve Bank. We must stop trying to undermine Reserve Bank Governor and actually defend him and ensure that we continue the work of a functioning Reserve Bank. If we implement these changes right away, I believe we can do the changes that we need to undo the damage of the past decade. We can't sit back, fellow South Africans, and watch our growth stagnate for another quarter and then another quarter. Because the poor South Africans cannot withstand this. For them, life is getting harder under VAT, it's getting harder under petrol, and ultimately we're shrinking further. I want to call upon you and members of this House that today we have to make the hard choices. Not the easy choices like hiking up loans and taking up more VAT. We've got to make more hard choices. So in conclusion, honorable members, if we're going to get out of this recession, this is the only choice we've got to make. Either we keep the unity of the ANC and that project, or we choose the prosperity of South Africa. I choose the prosperity of South Africa.
Honorable Minister of Economic Development. Order. Honorable Patel.